Hey everybody. I wanted to talk about do a little AAR play report of my last session. Running old school essentials. I run a Stonehell campaign and I've been using BX essentials and now old school essentials for that. I've been running the game for a year and started Stonehell in June. So we did session 23 of actual Stonehell of this continuous campaign. But I wanted to just kind of go over just tell you what happened basically and talk about my prep and process and everything like that. And I'm also doing this as a video because I ran through Hole in the Oak this time. So I wanted to show this off a little bit. So let's get started. So with my campaign in Stonehell, there were many times when, since I run it like a sandbox open, there would be times that the players would just wander onto another level or a completely different area, really unexpectedly for me, where I thought logically they're going to go here, but they'd go somewhere else, and I hadn't, in some cases, I hadn't even read that part of the dungeon. I try to not over-prep. As a general rule, I think over-prepping can make you as the DM want to force players into something or develop expectations of outcomes that impinge on the player's freedom. So I try to not over prep. My prep is more just what exists and having that in my head so that I can describe it pretty much. And things like motivations and stuff like that, but nothing like story or this such and such must happen or anything like that. But so now what I do is I tell them, okay, you need to tell me in advance the week at the end of the session, plan what you want to do and tell me so that that way I can have a rough, okay, I need to focus on getting this area of the dungeon in my head. Now, a couple of months ago, they did do a wilderness adventure, which was, again, unexpected. The wilderness adventure was based on Johan the Gnome. Now, in Stonehell, there is a gnome named Johan who's like this NPC character. I think he's in 1C. Yeah, so in Stonehell, in Area 1C, you have Johan, and he's basically a prisoner of the orcs, and they recovered him. Okay, so the next week, I didn't necessarily want him going with them, but he still existed. So he had an issue in his home commune where he was raised. And the players, he told them, I'm not coming with you. They really wanted him to come with them. He said, no, I've got this going on. So they said, well, we're going to go with you and help you. So that was like, okay, wow, okay, I got to run this wilderness adventure. I had a basic idea of what he was going through, but they went and kind of dealt with it, not perfectly, ideally, but they confronted an ogre mage who was charming all of his, the rest of his commune that he was raised in. He was like orphaned or something like that. And there was a whole thing. So they'd been bringing it up and talking about it because I've hinted the ogre mage and he went and charmed the rest of the community because the players didn't quite succeed in what they were doing. And Johan may have been charmed by the ogre mage, or maybe he's an ally now because he's upset. So I've mentioned things going on in the wider world. And like a barbarian tribe has come in from the wider world and come into Stonehell because of the deeper plot of what Stonehell is about. Things are drawn to it. So the last session, they said, well, we want to go in the wilderness and let's find that ogre mage and Johan. Let's figure that out. Let's resolve that. So I'm like, okay, let me prep a wilderness adventure. So have a couple of tools for that. I have one thing I leaned on a little bit, not a ton, was this book, Into the Weird and Wild, which is like a wilderness crawl, wilderness setting book it's OSR based, and it's was a Kickstarter that fulfilled. It's been a while. I haven't utilized this book. I flipped through it. I didn't flip through it as much as I should have. I was a little bit underwhelmed in some ways by this book, but the past week and a half I've really been dipping into it more. It's got some cool, really the beasts are really cool. There's some horrifying monsters in here that will make wilderness adventures just terrifying, extremely dangerous. I actually do like a lot of these monsters. They're very good. And there's some good random sights and everything. I didn't really care for this part. I might mess with this more, the actual creation of a wilderness crawl. I don't know about this part of it yet. I'll have to think about it. But I didn't utilize that. I knew I was going to do something more basic and with the rules. So I just pulled from this. What I utilized was I picked some monsters here and I built the random encounter table. That's what this book, a big fault of this book is it doesn't have a random encounter table. It really should have made one. I'm surprised that there's not a random encounter table in this book, unless I can't find it. But so I made one. I picked some monsters that I liked, and I'm also planned on using this 100 weird locations as like a dungeon dressing type thing for everything. So I created a random table. Sometimes you get monsters, sometimes you get just a location, different things like that. Okay, so that's what I relied on for this. And I took this, trying to utilize lots of resources, these Trailblazer game stamps, which are awesome. The only downside of these is they're not enough. The guy needs to make more. He says he's going to make more. There's going to be another Kickstarter. Can't wait. So I've just got, village, keep, hinge, tower, some different forests and stuff like that. And then I've got the small ones. So I printed out the hex paper that he designed, like where the hexes are the right size for these stamps. And I made a quick wilderness map with it on like this resume paper I have. I didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. I just needed a basic map. And I didn't label anything in terms of where things are. But this is their home base. And Stonehell is assumed to be in this same hex. Okay, this is 6 mile hexes. So I'm going with 6 mile hexes. I just I knew there's forest. There's also forest. And then I'll put mountains up here and just other stuff. And here's a river. So basic. I didn't key it because I knew I wanted to run Hole in the Oak. I wanted to encourage that to happen. But I was going to do, by the book, wilderness exploration rules where they might get lost. So I basically quantum ogred the Hole in the Oak in a sense. I wasn't going to put it on the map. What I did was on my general encounter table, Hole in the Oak is one of the results. So whatever hex they're in, when that got hit is now where that is. That's how I dealt with that. Because I knew I wanted to run it. And I wanted to make it likely. So when I made the table, I made it likely. Right? So I just quickly threw this together. Wilderness random encounter for December 12th. 1d8 per hex. Given their encumbrance, they were only going to be doing 1 hex. Because these guys are carrying so much crap. I know all these creatures they fight, they harvest parts of it, they chop them up, they collect everything. One guy we found some bed rolls, and he said, "Oh, I want them." So he took 6 bed rolls and he's carrying them around. I mean, you do you, I guess. So they're going really slowly. They're only going to do 1 hex a day. So for every hex, I'm rolling 1d8. On 1 through 3, they discover the Hole in the Oak. 4 or 5 monster encounter, and I created a table based mostly on creatures from Word in the Wild, but also drugged out commune folk, 2d6 of them, they're hostile, is another possible result. On a 6, just do a weird location, and a 7 or 8, just do a random dungeon dressing. I've got the, Raging Swan Press or something like that. It has a whole book of wilderness dressing tables and stuff. So I was just going to grab something out of that just to describe things, but otherwise nothing happens. So the weird locations are pretty cool. There's 100 of them. Just Plummeting waterfall, for example, a running creek points to the sound of gallons of crashing water. The ground rises up into a massive cliff face of layered stone. A giant waterfall courses over the edge, crashing into a rocky pool below. So that's that. Some of them are more interactive. The only downside is these are probably not the best things to randomly roll up in the course of play because they're too wordy, actually thinking about it now. These are probably things that, actually next time I do this, I'm going to pre-roll them so that I already know what I'm dealing with and I don't have to read it, that I already have an idea and I can condense it. Because the writing's good, it's evocative, but heat of the moment at the table, I'm not sure these are actually that good. Just based on that. Maybe, I haven't read all of them. So anyway, moving on from that. So that was how I was going to structure this. And for the wilderness crawl, I was using just the basic rules for wilderness. Losing direction. This is going to course to travel, roll. That was it. And if they lost direction, I was going to roll 2d6 of 2 different colors. If the colored die was odd, then they would veer based on the hex direction. So it would be counterclockwise or clockwise, basically. And that's how I would, not 2d6. I was going to, I can't remember what I was going to do now, but it just so turned out they didn't get lost. So it didn't happen. But I was going to have like an odd or an even. So if they were going north, odd, they went that way. Even, they went that way, basically. So I was rolling 2d6, right? So like the first was the colored die was how they got lost, and the other one was do they get lost? So it's just quicker to roll them at the same time. So this was the map. So for this adventure, we had 11 players. 11 players. This is the session log. I have an Excel sheet. I print them out and save them. Some of this stuff, ignore. Don't pay attention to that because I need to update some of my formulas. But I had a 4th level halfling, a 3rd level fighter, a 1st level ranger, 4th level cleric. They've been playing the longest. Elon and Eloise. And Blink was not here today. Two 3rd level magic users actually. 1st level dwarf, 1st level gnome, and then these people were brand new. I didn't get her alignment. I think it was neutral. Vestrin the elf, Jaeger the fighter, and Genoa the thief. I think she was sitting very far away from me, and I think that's what she said her name was. There were a lot of people, and she was very far away from me. So that's who we had going into this. So the ranger helped with them not getting lost, and so they were on their way. So the first thing they did, the very first thing they did is I knew that in the hole in the oak, there are these like Easter egg type things. I'm just going to skip to that real quick in here. These unanswered mysteries. One of them I wanted to develop was chess pieces. I got really excited by this, and I have a puzzle. I'm pretty sure I have it all worked out, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. But I needed 3 chess pieces, and I needed the players to want these. So what I did was I was doing a lot of random rolls. I was rolling like a d12 and just counting around the table, and that was who got picked for whatever. So Elon got picked, and I said, okay, during the past week when you guys were resting up, you run into a kobold. He wandered out of the dungeon, and you just you're talking to him, and he pulls out a chess piece. It's a white bishop. It's etched with runes, and he offers to trade it to you. And I didn't really care what he traded it. What he offered, he just needed to make some kind of a reasonable offer. I really wanted him to get it and get a sense of its importance. The kobold says he took it off of a chessboard, and the runes were glowing when he first got it. And it was on a chessboard on the 3rd level of the dungeon. So the other chess pieces in this adventure are going to be from the same set and linked together for a puzzle if they find them. They'll probably find one of them. The other one I'm not sure if they'll find. But they need 3 pieces. I found a good puzzle involving 3 pieces. So that's what I did first. Then they bought the supplies and everything like that. And then they were off into the wilderness. So the mapper guy, I said, I gave him a blank one with just that in the middle. And I said, here's the stamps, have at it. And they say, let's go north, because they don't really know where they're going. They just know vaguely north. They didn't get lost, and I rolled an encounter, and Hole in the Oak came up first. So now I know that's where the Hole in the Oak is. It's in that hex. I don't need to... I need to put it on here, or in my notes or something. So, it could have been anywhere, really, just depending on whatever. So that's happened really quickly. So then they're in the Hole in the Oak. Well, they don't just jump into the place, right? I have to lure them in, and thankfully they did go in. So since they were looking for this actually, and another reason I wanted to run this was because it tied in actually in a lot of ways to my particular Stonehell campaigns. You have Johan the gnome; they know he's out there doing stuff, and he was raised in a commune of worshippers of the god of fleeting nightmares or lucid dreams, fleeting nightmares and lucid dreams. And they like psilocybin mushrooms, tripped out and worshipped this guy. That's what he was raised in. But they were humans, and he went off. Now in this, there are heretic gnomes. There's a cult of heretic gnomes in here. So that totally ties in some way or another. So and there's also like a lizard temple, which ties into level 2 of Stonehell dungeon. And there's a river, and in level 2 of Stonehell dungeon, which is down right by where the lizard men are, there's a river as well. So it's like, okay, this connects. It connects, right? It's got to connect. So I'm excited about all that, all those like inner connections and everything. So they're in the forest, and they come upon a glade, an airy glade, a clearing with this massive gnarled ancient oak. And they see a gnome with a bright red hat that doesn't notice them, and they see him go into the oak tree and disappear. So of course they go and they look down, they see there's a hole with a ladder made out of roots going down into the earth, and they decide, well, they debate it. For a minute they think they're not going to do it, but then they do it. I really wanted them to, but I wasn't going to force them. I mean, some of the monsters in this thing are just like so out there that they would, like, just one encounter could take up a whole session of, like, it could lead to all kinds of story elements. So I was fine if they didn't, but I wanted them to, but they did. So that was awesome. So let me show you this a little bit really quickly. You've got your map here, and it's only here in the very front of the book. If there were one complaint, I would prefer this to be in the exact center of the book. I was doing a lot of flipping, quite a bit of flipping, back and forth. Had to keep my thumb in it. If it were in the center, it's just easier to get to, in my opinion. It was one thing, just the nature of the book. It's easier to open it to the center than do this to get to it. Plus, you can get to it from, if you're here, you can go, depending on where you are in the book or whatever. So I would have preferred it in the front. It's maybe not large enough of a dungeon to show sections of it throughout the book. That would probably increase the page count, actually. But that's the only little complaint. The dungeon, I think, is well laid out and well designed. I like the room numbers, and what I really like, actually, are the green where it shows encounters / monsters, lizards, evil stump, gnomes, root faces, ghouls, that sort of thing, and the locked doors. So, and it looks. I mean, I like the drawing in it. I mean, it's just a better map than the Stonehell maps, which are very plain and generic. and it's just more helpful in general. But the other thing is, I don't think he needed to put a table of contents in this. That's just me. So they go down into the dungeon. You've got a basic history with some historical factions, and there's like remnants of this stuff. So the reptile cultists is something I'm really excited about. They're not active anymore. They were defeated, but there's, instead of an organized cult religion, now in Stonehell, there's Garyal, a lizardman shaman, and there's some holy ground over there. But they were mostly defeated by the White League, I think. I'm not sure. The story doesn't really matter. And yeah, sure. You got your rumors. I gave out one rumor. I gave out the first rumor to the magic user with the highest intelligence. That, you know, in his studies, he heard that there was a great wizard that once dwelt in these caverns. Beware the deadly bronze golem, which is not true. It's just a statue. And random happenings, random encounter table, random happenings table, really. Some of these are like encounters with like monsters that will attack. And some of them are just like people, and then some of them are just random like event type things. And so I'll talk about those as I go through the story. And then the general layout of the book, I'm just going to show some pages here. Let me find a good example page. I think this one's fine. So the general layout of the room descriptions, you have large and underlined and numbered is the name of the room or the area. And then you'll have also in brown enlarged are major features of the room, but here you have bold keywords for just general descriptions. So drowned corpses, this area has got stone blocks. The ceiling's 10 feet high, and everything is made out of stone, like large stone blocks. And there's an overwhelming stench of decaying flesh, overwhelming your noses. And then, but one of the major features of this area are 7 corpses, and then you can drill down with further descriptions of them. So this area is like this, and there's 7 corpses in it. The Ghoul Bay is a cavern, and it just opens up into a rushing river, and there's a sandy bay, and it's streaked with gore and blood and a little grizzle and fat and stuff like that. And the major features here are a half-devoured corpse, bones and driftwood, moored rowing boat. So, and when you drill down these little, I don't know what you call them, triangles, those drill down to, in a sense of like what happens when you interact with the thing. So like Fishing Bay has chalk scrawlings. Reading the scrawlings, it says this, right? The moored rowing boat, here's what happens when you use it. The bones and driftwood, searching the pile. Half-devoured corpse reacts this way. So that's your interaction of a thing. If it's got those things, then it's going to act or interact in some way or another. Or it describes like personalities of things. For example, with the troglodytes, 3 troglodytes, gawping faces. Those are the things in Area 16. Troglodytes, it sections them out. This guy's a bully. This guy makes tomfool, constant gurgling giggles reaction. And that keys in obviously with like stat blocks. Like there's a stat block, and these are the things about the troglodytes, right? Gawping faces. If you press the eye, secret door opens. So there's a logic to the layout that's consistent throughout the book, which I appreciate quite a bit personally, because I can really quickly scan and see, okay, this room, the major feature is this, and then I can, if they interact with the major feature, I can just find my bullet points to see what that interaction is. So you can almost just run this without even reading it. There's been a criticism. I read a review that said it's confusing, but I don't agree. I think these things are clearly distinct from this to my eyes. It's smaller, it's not underlined, but that, be that as it may. Okay. Nice art, nice book. So they go into the hole in the oak. I'm just gonna have the map up tell you what happened. They come in here, they go along, and right here, there are roots that attack, but what they do is they steal a random item, and you get one chance to attack the root and get your item back. Several people had things stolen. A couple of them got it back, but magic user lost his spell book. That was devastating. And another guy lost a magic ring that he can't figure out how to use. He hasn't figured it out yet, so that happened. Then they proceed through, and when the roots come out to grab an item, and then they just pull it into the wall. So the walls are all just roots and dirt and earth, but mainly just roots. Like everything, you're inside of this massive tree, basically. At least like this area. And then here you've got cave and worked stone. So the trees, like, I think mainly just this area right here. As you go on, there are root faces that talk. The walls are covered in green faces with glowing red eyes that speak in unison. And they're friendly. And if you pay them, if you put money into the roots, they give hints about the dungeon. If this is run for first level characters, then I can have a lot of money to get a lot of hints, probably. But my players have been playing for a while. Some of them have lots of money. It's just like, I think, 5 gold for a hint as well. So they got all the hints. 5 gold per hint. So I ended up just reading all of these hints to them. I mean, and they're good hints. They can help you navigate the dungeon. I mean, they're, interesting. I do like this. I want to incorporate like a hint kind of system in my game. I just haven't developed it fully. Mostly, I mean, a lot of times it could be failure of description or, I mean, just confusion when you have so many players and so many people talking, so many different ideas being thrown around where they just kind of miss things sometimes. And I wish that I could give them a hint, but I don't. So I might incorporate some kind of a hint system. But anyway, they go through that. Another feature, like of these early rooms especially, is that in the room description, he'll have bracketed out the sounds that you hear to the north and to the east, or the smells, or the glowing green light and stuff like that. That's really helpful. It's especially helpful when you're in the heat of the moment running it. Like Stonehell doesn't have anything like that. So in the heat of the moment running, if I'm not remembering it, that like, okay, there's something over here that would be something making noise. There's a fight over there, a battle or whatever, but I don't remember. Based on the layout, it's not really apparent, easy to see. It's kind of disappointing to me personally. I don't know if the players catch up on it. Then they go and there's a battle. It's like, well, you would have heard that, but anyway. They continued east with these bats here. And when they were here, I got the random encounter of Hazrad the Unholy popped up. And so this one, a blue robe magic user named Hazrad the Unholy, skulking around in the dark, muttering about being late. He seeks the jars in area 37. So he was here. The jars are full of teeth in a secret room. And so my high charisma magic user talked to him and struck a bargain. He said he agreed to look for the teeth. And the party kept going this way, and Hazrad went back this way. They had a hint about there's a silver sword in the pillars, so they investigated all these pillars. So when they got to this one, they scraped away the algae, and the dwarf London opened this up, and there's a black skeleton in there with a silver sword, which the black skeletons were not activated, but I'm like, no, dude, he's going to activate. I'm not going to just give him the sword. Especially they got all the hints. So the skeleton attacks him immediately. One thing I did have to do for this is I increased, for most monsters, not everybody, I'm increasing their hit die to make it. You have 12 people fighting one skeleton. I mean, it's not going to be dangerous at all, but he fights the skeleton. The battle lasts like 2 rounds, I think. The skeleton hits him and destroys his shield, knocks him to the ground, and then the ranger dispatches it. She gets the killing blow, stabbing it with her or wrecking it with her pole arm. And London the dwarf takes the silver sword, which is now notched. The party continues east and listens at these 3 doors, which was kind of fun. So they have faces on them, a bull, a jester, and a lion. And when you listen, you hear a bull laughing and a lion roaring. And those things aren't in those rooms, but it's something for them to ponder, and they puzzle over it. They go into room 40, which has a circle of stone benches around a table with a bunch of red candles. They decide they want to sit down. The door closes and it's like a sensory deprivation, or at least in terms of sound, so they don't hear anything. They light the candles. Now, the book doesn't say anything happens, right? But I'm like, okay, it's time to roll a random encounter. So I roll, and I get this one, which I just love it when random encounters tie in, like, perfectly with, like, what the players are doing at that time. So they all sit down and light the candles and look into the flames. And then I roll a random encounter, which is this. The phantasmal form of a white-whiskered, purple-robed wizard appears. There he is. He gestures sternly and proclaims, Bazira the imperishable forbids all intrusion beyond this point. The illusion then disappears. And it says if the PCs pass the forbidden point, they have to save versus spells or grow that mustache. I just had to make that save when they left the room. So that appeared. It's like they summoned it by lighting the candles, but it was really just a random encounter. So like that emergent narrative was this really cool. Really fucking cool, I thought. So that happens. A couple, the halfling gets a mustache and the ranger gets a mustache. They come around here to this room with the fire beetles, but they don't mess with them. They're like, no. Then they come back around over here. And they're walking through this room, which is, they have to walk, their movement rate is reduced by 75%. So they're at a crawl, basically, because the floor is uneven. It's got a lot of like really small, sharp rocks. You can't plant your foot down square on the ground. You got to worry about twisting your ankle. And I got another random encounter here, which is Ramius, the sheep-headed fawn, is walking towards the river with gore-soaked rags, or gore-soaked clothing. So they obviously killed somebody, and he's going to go wash the clothes, I guess. And he walks through quickly because he's got hooves, and he just says, excuse me, nice to meet you. And he's trying to hide what he's carrying. He doesn't want them to see it, but he's very friendly. And he says, I gotta go, I'm busy. He doesn't want to talk to them, but he says, you could come by for tea sometime, but he keeps going. So the halfling and the gnome in the party decide they want to like run ahead and follow, while the others are still worried about this. The gnome and the halfling have an easier time of this room. And so they go behind. So the party gets split. So then when the fawn comes up here, they hear him say, excuse me, just passing through. And he goes through here. And they follow. They see these lizards soaking in poop. And they just scurry past. And he just starts washing his stuff. And so that's happening. Cut to the rest of the party. They come out here. They notice this hallway. The walls are full of holes. Like the size of arms. Like it's almost honeycombed. And they ignore it. But then Vestrin the elf decides he's going to stick his arm in there. In one of the holes. I roll. There is a table for that. You can get some really fascinating stuff happen there. Like there's 2 tables actually regarding this room. One for an item that you might grab, and another for hand mutations. You roll both of these. Both times, nothing happened. I rolled nothing. And then he did his other arm, nothing. And then the rest of everybody else said, no, we're not going to mess with this. Let's just push on. They enter this room. There are 4 mighty lizards. Now, these things are very dangerous. I didn't even need to modify these guys' stats. 6 hit dice. They have 3 attacks around. I mean, that's how I played it. I played 2 claw and 1 bite. 3 attacks around. THACO 14. They're dangerous. These things are very dangerous. They investigate this. There are 2 black skeletons that are inactive. And there's an altar here of a lizard god, a chameleon god, covered in algae. They scrape it away. And they see a golden bowl, which they pilfer. And I tell them that some of the insignia is similar to some of the stuff they saw in the Lizardman Shrine in Stonehell Dungeon. So I'm saying that cult is the same cult. They're related in some way or another. The lizards, when you look in their eyes, their mesmerizing eyes, you're transported and you have a vision of erotic lizard man rituals if you gaze into their eyes. So they notice that they're hypnotic eyes. And then London says, does anybody have a mirror? And Genoa says, I have a mirror. He says, we'll try to use the mirror to like have them like look at themselves and see what happens. I didn't really think about what would happen with that. So I had it happen, and the lizard goes crazy and gets the other lizards agitated, and so lizards attack them. That's what I did. I was like, okay, these guys need some danger in their life. So they get into a battle with these lizards. They do terribly. Several people are killed. I think 1, 2... Actually, I think maybe only... I think 3 people get killed. Senna, the magic user, gets knocked down to only 1 hit point. He's level 3, so he had a little bit of life in him. And there was one point where I had rolled initiative, and I was like, well, I thought he was dead because he's freaking out. He's like, no, I've got 1 hit point left. They failed initiative, and I said, and he's like, well, maybe they drink these potions. And I'm like, what potions? What potions are you talking about? And he said, you know, when we were in that place with the inmates, and we found this room, and I'm like, oh, those potions. He's like, I'm just going to drink a bunch of them. And I said, all right, so that's cool. So I'm actually going to let you personally win initiative just to have a moment to drink those potions. But then they're going to go. So he kind of goes back and forth. He's like, I want to drink 1 at a time. And I'm like, dude, you don't have time. You can drink 1, or you can drink all of them. But you can't just like taste test all the potions. You have like 6 seconds. But I'm going to let you just take them all in a fist and just chug them. So he does that. And so there's a table in here in Stonehell. There's only a 1 in 10 chance of them having an effect. It says if they fail a save versus poison. I didn't even do that. I didn't read that. I just saw the 1 in 10. Pulling stuff out in the heat of the moment in Stonehell can be a challenge sometimes. So I just rolled a bunch of dice for all the things. And only 2 of them were active. And he falls into a coma and hallucinates for 2d6 turns. So those intermixed. So basically I said he seemed to be dead, and it was as if he were on a DMT trip. So he just falls into a coma, and he's hallucinating like geometric shapes and machine elves or frog-headed men, God speaking to him or something. So that's what he starts going through. So the lizard that was really fucking him up just assumes he's dead, attacks other people. So the battle goes for, a while, and then they decide, okay, we need to run. They barely hurt the lizards, honestly. Barely hurt them. So they run away after all that, and they just drag the bodies this way. Cut to them. They start talking to Ramius. He invites them to tea, talks to them. He's very friendly. And he says, you should come by for tea. And he's also excited because that's where the faction relationships came into play. One thing this book does need, maybe, is instead of listing the faction relationships as it does, because there are these factions in the dungeon, and you have these relationships, and it says how each one feels about all the others. I made a grid in my notes, and I had to flip back to that. So it's ugly, but I made this. So the Fawns want an alliance with the Gnomes. So Mr. Smitty is a gnome, and Ramius isn't sure. Maybe Mr. Smitty's one of the gnomes that live here. So he really wants them to come back and try to help broker an alliance. He doesn't spell that out, but he says, we want to be friends with the gnomes. And So they said, yeah, we'll come back and have a meeting and stuff like that. So Ramius is very excited. So, of course, I have to turn in my mind, are the sheep-headed fawns going to try to kill the party right away? Or maybe just some of them? Because that's what the fawns do. They offer you tea that makes you pass out, and then they chop you to pieces and eat you. But there's a gnome. They want to be friends with the gnomes, so not sure. At this point, it was getting late in the session. Like, all this, took a while. It was like, we have 3 hours, right, to play. That's what our time is. But I had 3 brand new players who had to create characters. Didn't really know D&D, or at least this version, so they needed a little bit of guidance and stuff. So it ate a little bit of time up, but it doesn't take that long to make a character. So it's getting close to 10 o'clock at this point. And we've got the halfling Eloise has 4 potions, but they're not identified. So these like really beat up, banged up people just start drinking the potions. So I have in my, I don't have it right here with me to show you, but I have, I took every potion in BX and gave it 4 descriptors. So when I give somebody a potion, I tell them the color and the consistency and the smell if they smell it, and they have a taste. So color, consistency, smell, taste. So she's like, okay, you're going to drink the blue pulpy potion that smells like sulfur, stuff like that. Only one of them was a healing potion. The other one was a potion of polymorph. So I'm like looking up, like, okay, is there a random table what they polymorph to? Couldn't remember. And the guy who drank is like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to have wings and can fly or something, and what's going to happen to me. So I just keyed off of that and said, you turn into a crow. So he turns into a crow, all his equipment's dropped down. He loses all of his equipment. Nobody in the group said they'd get his stuff, so it's all sitting here. And then another guy drinks one, and I tell him he's invisible. And then he says he wants to rob a party member, and I say, okay, you guys all see him. You don't know what he's doing. Because it was a potion of delusion. And then another guy had a potion of treasure finding. So he just became intensely aware of a treasure to the northwest, which was here. That's the biggest treasure. The biggest single treasure, I think the most value is right here, which is how they're going to find that. I mean, they've got to go all the way around. There's a secret locked door and all this stuff. So that was kind of ramping it up. And the Ramius, they didn't have time to get back home, says, you can come, we can put you up for the night. Just come back and have some tea. So they come back. He leads them back. I don't tell them the mapping of it, but they come back. They don't have to go through here. They can loop around and come back. And he offers everybody tea. Some people are paranoid and don't drink the tea. I'd say most people drink the tea, though. And then I said, okay, you all need to make saving throws. Write down who failed the saving throw. And then I said, okay, end of session. So we'll see what happens with that. I think I'm going to have to think about if the fawns kill any of them, they'll probably actually negotiate with Mr. Smitty or something like that. So that's what happened. That was the adventure. They got some XP, about 200. They didn't really recover treasure, so they couldn't get anything, but I give out exploration experience as well in my game, so they got about 180 XP is each. So that's what happened. They barely scratched the surface of this, but there was other stuff going on. And when you have that many people, like some of the things I just briefly glossed over took a lot of time because they were analyzing, debating what to do. They were really getting freaked out over here with the screeching sound that it made. That really worried them. They were really worried about the sounds these doors made. They spent a lot of time searching these pillars and dealing with the bats and everything. So everything always takes longer than you think it would when you have that many people. Oh, another thing we had to do too was rearrange the tables in the room so everybody could sit and get more chairs, all that kind of stuff. So, but it was overall a really good session. The new players, they chipped in. They had a contribution. I think pretty much everybody contributed. Actually, it was good because sometimes when I have that many people, some people don't ever say anything or get to do anything meaningful. But I think pretty much everybody was engaged. Maybe I'm just getting better at actually like pointing and highlighting people and stuff like that.